If we want to do that work, it won't be enough for us to study our vision. We'll have to study it deeply enough to understand it thoroughly. And this is the work. This is the quiet. This is not the rah-rah. This is not the looking cute. This is not the Nubians, y'all forever be wanting to buy a t-shirt with a saying. Nah, it's going to have to go deeper than that. I know I'm being shady. I'm owning it. Okay.
No, don't say that shade, because that becomes the proxy for doing something. And if we do something with the resources, that's important. And that's the step beyond that. But no, that's not shade. That's an acknowledgement that that's, if it's not a means to an end, it's a diversion. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, after understanding it, we'll need to articulate it so clearly that anyone with intelligence and integrity can understand it too. The most intelligent will want to work with it. So, to articulate the vision attractively. And John Henry Clark talks about this. If you want to teach, you got to be able to, like, I think he used the word entertain, but I think it's about articulating it attractively.
He would say,
again,
you got to hold your audience.
You got to hold your audience.
Right.
My aunt again, Sister Sally Benga said, Jewity said, to do that and to make a living doing it. That is the challenge we've avoided so far in our cleverness. Were we be clever, or were we just afraid it couldn't be done?
There it is.
What a huge challenge, working for the future and managing to get paid for it. And they go on. But I do want to bring up this issue of what is African, right? He says, much of what we call African culture, if it originates in the time after Arab and European invasions, is really the adjustments made by society under immense enemy pressure. It's inaccurate to call our adjustments to slavery African culture. A slave hustling to survive within a slaving system does not create African culture. He makes a makeshift slave culture. So when we talk about for the culture, we're doing all these kind of crazy stuff and saying it's for the culture. And he goes on to say, it's true. Lack of knowledge about our past has crippled African spirits. One last part that I'm going to read. Help me, Benga, Anna Amma said. You tell them what kind of person Jewit's father was. You knew him better than I did. He was an African, Professor Benga said. An African? My mother was puzzled. You see, he was always thinking about Africa, not himself, his family, or his tribe. Africa, how we might rise together. That was the dream that brought us here. The time he met Nana Amma. We flew in from Leopoldville, Kanasha today to this city. He insisted I accompany him. He didn't go anywhere without me. And he goes on to talk about what he was doing. And he said, I wasn't in politics. This is Benga speaking. Scholarship was my life. Studying the European classics, I ran into a paradox. The ancient Greeks kept writing about a more ancient source in Africa, Egypt. That's how I got interested in Egyptian hieroglyphics. Jewiti's father was organizing party cells, talking about what work can we be doing? He talked openly about ending European oppression, working for African freedom. I was amazed when he brought his colleagues to see me. What did he want? He wanted me to organize African history seminars for party activists.
There it is.
One thing excited him, information about Africans acting together.
Yeah.
And so when we talk about what work we need to do, I don't care what your field is, engineering, music, medicine, architecture, whatever it is, if we are not grounded in who we are as African people, and as Kathy said, going way back, we're just going to be maintaining a system that we say we don't.
Even when we try to do something different. Is that what, I mean, I'm sitting here because, again, everybody, as you reading the book, as you go into the book, you know, Benga being Jehudie's elder, Benga knowing Jehudie's father, who knew Nana Amma, who is Nefert's mother, and then to evoke Leopoldville, which we now know as Kinshasa, I mean, the Congo, everything being, which is Patrice Lumumba. I mean, and I just want to interject this in the context of a question that Insight News put in the chat some time ago, which asked, what will happen when lots and lots of Africans in the diaspora decide to connect, financially and otherwise, to the African continent? Will Africa embrace or resist? If resistance, so what? I think immediately about somebody like Dr. Yvonne Sion, Yvonne Sherrill is a scholar who does some other kind of. Yvonne Sion, who was Dave Chappelle's mom, who worked for Patrice Lumumba for 2 years in the Inga Dam Project in Congo. She knew him. When we see Dave Chappelle, we're seeing somebody who grew up in a household where his mother and father, particularly his mother, she was not only a convicted Pan-Africanist, she's a global Pan-Africanist, worked on the continent of Africa, worked in those revolutionary movements. And her son, when he got jammed up with Comedy Central, of course, he goes to South Africa and they say he's crazy and that's how kind of thing. I'm raising out to say this. Dave Chappelle not going to free us. Clearly, that his style, his technique, and he said this when he got the Mark Twain Award at the Kennedy Center. He says, my mother, who told me to be, he called it a griot, or really a jolly, but your storytelling, your entertainment, your compelling ability to translate, you've pumped it full of errant stuff so that if you're listening very closely, you can still hear the deeper influences of Africa, but it has become so commingled with this other stuff that the question I'm raising is he helping us when he goes to South Africa? And this is where I want to end with this. In these South African elections, one of the things came up in the feed, watching the election returns. Somebody said, because the Western Cape is where some of the people who are the more privileged are. Cape Town, all of them. That's where you see some of the whites, some of the quote unquote colored. That's where the DA, Democratic Alliance stronghold is. They're now coming in number 2 in the tally. The ANC doesn't have 50%. Now they're saying maybe you should make a deal with the DA. The DA is led by this John Steinhausen or whatever, this white dude. And they're for neoliberal politics, privatizing stuff, this kind of thing. All that to say this. Somebody in the chat watching the South African election return said, yeah, be suspicious of the Western Cape because a lot of African Americans are coming into the Western Cape and buying property. So that sent me off down to look at some YouTube videos, see if I can find. And you see these Africans from the diaspora, from the U.S., getting out of these nice vans, going touring these nice properties, saying we're going to move to South Africa. But when you raise that question, what will happen inside news when lots and lots of Africans in the diaspora decide to connect financially and otherwise to the African continent? Will Africa embrace or resist? If resistance, so what? As you're reading that piece, as they're debating with themselves, these people are looking to either maintain or enhance their lifestyles by becoming, so their version of Pan-Africanism is even worse. And they will find by Moses. Charlie Cobb used to say when they went to Tanzania in the 70s, an international black bourgeoisie that will embrace them at the expense of these poor black people who are so desperate in a place like South Africa that there's some of them voting for the DA because they said, I ain't got no electricity, I ain't got no water, the ANC is enriching itself. I'm willing to drink the dirty water of the DA and privatize everything if it means I'm going to have electricity and water. Are we conspiring? And if we're not going to conspire, as you raised the question, Aya, and this is not a spoiler alert, whether or not they answered the question or not, the question was raised in the book. Does it mean us getting out of these lifestyles we've grown accustomed to by virtue of our education? I'm asking because all of us have the luxury to be here on a Saturday without having to be out and earning our daily bread through the sweat of our brow in the moment to be able to talk about this. We're going to have to change the way we live to do this.
Yeah, but what is living?
We are?
Absolutely. It's not sustainable.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think the task at hand, and this is what I meant by that 10%, to be able to dig deeply in the thing that you are passionate about. And some of us are in some spaces that allow some resources for us to dig deeply, right? But to absolutely be able to have a skill, not just your body, not just some funding, but something that will help us build the world that we want. I think that I think that's what I mean when we're talking about something parallel, because it's something that it doesn't leave people high and dry, quit your job tomorrow, but it's how do you shift to something that then is going to break away.
Wow.
Break away from the thing. So that's how I see it.
Yeah.
And I think I wanted to add, because Aya said something early on in the conversation about seeing oneself through the different characters. And I think I wanted to say that I definitely see parts of me in different characters, but the conversation that Sally has around the meta nature, literally, that was me. I was like, I trust the people who are translating. Y'all got this. And I literally, I ran away from sitting in a class with Dr. Obinga when he was at Temple. I had the benefit of traveling when we left London and we got on the train and went to Paris. And, to sit in the space with him, I'm glad I did that. But I just kept thinking, I don't think I need to do the language. But now, I think the way in which, and this goes to how the message is delivered, the way that Mario has us drawing those glyphs, and the way in which I'm connecting to nature differently because of the tactile nature of drawing those glyphs.
Yes.
Like I feel like I'm Sally. I just it didn't hit me the right way, but the right messenger showed up, and I'm like, I get it now. I get it now. So even in my oral and literary traditions of the African world, it's a class that runs in the fall. And typically we move backwards and then we end with something like Ptah.
Wow.
But I am like, just for my class, we're going to write, those glyphs in the class just so they'll have a feel. I'm like, if Drake can, throw up, an owl on his gear, I'm like,